any food chain needs to start with producers. And at Carmel Church, those producers are tiny organisms called diatoms.
So why do we have a picture of the diatom instead of an actual fossil?
Diatoms are so small that you can't see them without a microscope. So we took a picture of a diatom from Carmel Church with a microscope and then made the picture bigger so that it was big enough for us to see here. Diatoms can be eaten by all kinds of small animals. Most of these animals don't preserve very well as fossils, and we don't have very many of them from Carmel Church.
Why aren't there many of these fossils?
Most of these animals are invertebrates, which means they don't have skeletons. To become a fossil, you need to have some hard part to your body. Now, some of these do. This is a shell from a brachiopod. But most of these animals don't have hard parts. And so we don't find the body itself as a fossil. We do sometimes, though, find evidence that they were there. Some of these animals dig holes into the mud, or they drill holes in the rocks. That's what these little round pits are all over this rock, are borings where some invertebrate animal has drilled a hole into the rock. So even though the animal itself wasn't preserved, we know that it was there. And all of these different invertebrates can eat the diatoms. So we can start our food chains by starting at the diatom and going to these first consumers.
Okay, so we can draw an arrow from the diatom to the different kinds of invertebrates because they feed on the diatom.
Right. Now these invertebrates are going to be eaten by larger animals, and the animals that tend to eat the invertebrates at Carmel Church are mostly vertebrates. They have skeletons, and so we have a much better fossil record for them. So we have lots of different fossils of things that can eat these. The invertebrates might be eaten by sea turtles. Over there we have a piece of the shell from a sea turtle.
Okay.
They can be eaten by rays. These are the teeth from an eagle ray. Or they can be eaten by small fish. And this is a vertebrate from some tiny fish. These small fish can be eaten by bigger fish, by bigger fish, by bigger fish, until we get up to really huge fish. And so we can make that part of our food chain as well.
Okay.
So starting from the invertebrates.
Going to the smaller fish.
Right.
And then this larger fish, or slightly larger fish, could eat the smallest fish. And then a larger fish could eat that fish. A larger fish could feed on that fish, and so on, all the way up to the largest fish.
And then we can also have the invertebrates getting eaten by the rays and by the turtles.
Okay. So the ray feed on invertebrates. The turtle can eat invertebrates. Now, are the invertebrates the only thing that the turtle would choose to eat?
Well, most animals will eat all kinds of different things.
Okay.
And they can be parts of a lot of different food chains. So the turtles and the rays could actually also eat some of these small fish.
Okay. So then I could draw an arrow from the small fish to the turtle because it can also eat the small fish, and the ray can also feed on small fish.
That's right. Now, even though we've gotten to pretty good sized animals, we're still not to the end of our food chain yet. These large fish, the rays, the turtles, can be eaten by still larger predators. So we could have small sharks, like the shark that this tooth came from. We could have crocodiles, and that's a crocodile tooth. We could have dolphins, and that's a tooth from a dolphin. And all of those predators can eat the fish, or the rays, or the turtles.
Okay. So then I could draw an arrow from the turtle to the dolphin because the dolphin can eat the turtle.
Right.
The dolphin could also choose to feed on the ray or larger fish.
That's right.
Okay. And then I could draw an arrow from the turtle to the crocodile. The crocodile could also eat the ray and also large fish. And then we have our small shark that you said
could also eat the fish.
Large fish.
Or the rays or the turtles.
Or the rays. Or the turtles. And I can really see here where all my arrows are crossing over each other. It really is starting to look like a web.
Right, so we have all these different food chains, and all the cross connections between them make a food web.
Right.
That's much more complicated, but tells you better how nutrients are moving through the ecosystem.
Neat.
Now if we come back to our invertebrates, way down here near the beginning of our food web, there are actually other routes that nutrients can take from invertebrates to other levels. So over here we have a piece of the backbone, one of the vertebrae, from a baleen whale.
And what do you mean by baleen?
Well, baleen is a structure that hangs from the top of the mouth in a baleen whale. It looks kind of like hair. And the whale uses it like a net. So the baleen whale will open its mouth and take in a bunch of water, and that water will have in it small fish and invertebrates. And then the baleen acts like a net. It traps the fish and the invertebrates in the whale's mouth, and the whale can eat those. So even though the whale may be really large, like the skeleton of a baleen whale that we have hanging in the museum hall, it's feeding on very small animals.
Okay. So then we could go all the way back to this level of our food web, to the invertebrates, and draw an arrow to the baleen whale, because it can feed on those.
That's right.
Using its baleen plates that kind of act like a net, and can feed on these smaller fish.
Right, so we've added another chain to our food web. But even as big as these baleen whales are, we're still not at the top of our food web yet. As big as these whales and the crocodiles and dolphins and the small sharks are, they're even bigger predators. So we can have large sharks, like the mako shark that tooth came from, that can feed on any of these. They can feed on the baleen whales, smaller sharks, the crocodiles, or the dolphins. And then we have not just big sharks, but really huge sharks, like that tooth from a shark called Carcarcles megalodon. They can also feed on whales or smaller sharks or crocodiles or dolphins.
Okay. So then I could have an arrow coming from the dolphin to the huge shark, from the crocodile to the huge shark, and from the smaller sharks to this very large shark.
And from the whale.
And from the whale. Wow.
And then all of those could also go to the just big shark.
Okay. So this large shark can feed on dolphins, crocodiles, smaller sharks, and the baleen whale? Still?
Probably, yeah.
Probably, wow, okay.
And then we have one more area that we can draw in. If we think about what was happening with these fish, with medium-sized fish eating small fish and big fish eating medium-sized fish, we have small sharks, we have big sharks, and we have huge sharks. Probably those huge sharks were eating the big sharks as well. So we can probably draw that arrow in too.
Okay. So this largest shark, humongous shark, could feed on a large shark.
And that big shark is the biggest animal found at Carmel Church, and was probably at the very top of the food chain. So far we haven't found any evidence of any animals, any predators bigger than that.
Wow. So what we see here is in the Carmel Church ecosystem, just like ecosystems today, energy can flow or can go many ways to all living things.
Right, and just like in a modern ecosystem, our Carmel Church food web has to start with a producer, and it goes through a series of consumers.